everyone would understand. He had to follow his heart. If only the senator's heart were the organ he was following, Garrett lamented silently. One of those freeze-frame silences followed, vast and uncomfortable, turning the whole assembly into a garden of stone statues, while several hundred people tried to process what they'd just heard Cox say. Who was this guy? They were probably asking themselves. And what had he done with the Morgan Cox they all knew? Where, Garrett himself wondered, was the man who had given that stirring eulogy at the double funeral after Jim and Sally McKettrick, his folks, were killed a decade before? The mass paralysis following Morgan's proclamation lasted only a few seconds, and Garrett was quick to shake it off. Automatically, he scanned the room for Nan Cox, his late mother's college roommate, and found her standing near the grand piano, alone. Most likely, Nan, a veteran political wife, had been in transit between one conversational cluster and another when her husband dropped the bombshell. She was still smiling, in fact, and the effect was eerie, even surreal. Like the true lady she was, however, Nan immediately drew herself up, made her way through friends and strangers, enemies and intimate confidants, to step up to Garrett's side, link her arm with his, and whisper, "Get him out of here, Garrett. Get Morgan out of here, now, before this gets any worse." Garrett glanced at the senator, who ignored his wife of more than 3 decades, the mother of his children, the flesh and blood, hurting woman he had just humiliated in a very public way, to gaze lovingly into the upturned face of his mistress. The mermaid's plump, glistening lower lip jutted out in a pout. Cox patted the young woman's hand reassuringly then, acting as though she, not Nan, might have been traumatized. The cameras came out, amateur and professional. A blinding dazzle surrounded the happy couple. Within a couple of minutes, some of that attention would surely shift to Nan. "I'm getting you away first," Garrett told Nan, using his right arm to lock her against his side and starting for the nearest way out. As the senator's aide, Garrett had a lot of experience at running interference, and he always scoped out every exit in every venue in advance, just in case. Even the familiar ones, like that hotel, which happened to be the senator's favorite. Nan didn't argue, not then anyway. She kept up with Garrett, offered no protest when he hustled her through a corridor crowded with carts and waitstaff, then into a service elevator. Garrett flipped open his cell phone and speed-dialed a number as they descended, Nan leaning against the elevator wall now, looking down at her feet, stricken to silence. Her beautifully coiffed silver hair gleamed in the fluorescent light. The senator's personal driver, Troy, answered on the first ring, his tone cheerful. "Garrett, what's up, man?" "Bring the car around to the back of the hotel," Garrett said, "and hurry." Nan looked up, met Garrett's gaze. She was pale and her eyes looked haunted, but the smile resting on her mouth was real, if slight. "You're probably scaring poor Troy to death," she scolded, putting a hand out for the cell phone. Garrett handed it over just as they reached the ground floor, and Nan spoke efficiently into the mouthpiece. "Troy, this is Mrs. Cox. Just so you know, there's no fire, and nobody's been shot or had a heart attack. But it probably is a good idea for me to leave the building, so be a dear and pick me up behind the hotel." A pause. "Oh, you are? Perfect. I'll explain in the car. Meanwhile, here's Garrett again." With that, she handed the phone back to Garrett. When he put it to his